APIA Nevada is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Tonight's episode of Out in Front is brought to you by our season sponsors, Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to Out in Front. My name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. So excited to have you this evening, and so excited to be back out in front with you. I know the past 2 weeks we have been doing this with our other friends, Brian and Aaron, but I am here at the Legislative Building. I'm not quite in front of the building right now because it is pouring rain outside because it can't make up its mind. But we have an excellent panel here for you tonight, talking all things Nevada legislature, all of the important bills that our coalition partners have been working on. And we're joined by Senator Dallas Harris, who is going to talk to us about the good work she's doing as well. So, Senator, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here. Talk to us about how session is going and some of the good work that you're doing already in session.
Well, Annette, nice to be with you all again. Thanks for inviting me back to Out in Front. I think the last time I kind of had to sneak and peek in on Senator Scheibel's Out in Front, so it's good to have an official invitation. Session has been crazy. I don't know what it is. There's something in the water. I think folks had all this pent up energy from not being able to be in the building last session, and now I can't get rid of them. So we're here doing the hard work for the people of Nevada, just at a frenzied pace. It feels like, and I think I've heard that from lobbyists and all kinds of folks. Right? It's not just us who are feeling that way, but I am confident we're going to get some good things done. There's a lot of good pieces of legislation out there. And for once, I'm not carrying them all. Just kidding. But I do have a good list of bills that I want to share with you all. First, headed by Battleborn and Moms Demand Action and Giffords, running a bill to help address gun violence prevention. So if you've been convicted of a hate crime, we're going to take your gun away. And if it's a felony, it's already done. But there's this loophole for things that are called gross misdemeanors, right? So you can have a gross misdemeanor that's a hate crime, and right now you can continue on with your weapons. We need to put that to an end. I just finished presenting SB 172, which was a bill that will allow minors to consent to preventative healthcare services related to STIs. That was a very interesting hearing. If you missed it, don't go back and watch it. I also have the Homeless Persons Bill of Rights, which was another really long hearing. But I personally believe good things are hard to do. And sometimes if your bill is just sliding on through, maybe you're not doing much, right? So I invite these kind of hard issues and I try and tackle them head on. And so it's good to see the process working, but it's definitely been a bit crazy.
So you're my state senator, so I'm really excited to have you represent me with all of this good legislation. It's nice to have somebody who, I had a good one before too, but it's nice to have people who actually do good work. You know, we were supportive of the birth control bill that you just had. We've been supportive of the Homeless Bill of Rights. We've been obviously supportive of the gun bill. You know, what are some of the other things that you're hearing about session around voting rights, around vouchers, around some of the criminal justice reform, some of the things we don't want rolled back, especially things that were talked about in the governor's State of the State address?
So I did hear a little bit about vouchers, and that's that they are dead. Vouchers are dead. Okay. I don't know if many of you know this, but the Senate Majority Leader in large part got involved in politics to stop ESAs, right? That's just not going to happen in this building. And unless the governor intends to expand executive power in some way to make this happen, it's absolutely not going to happen here. Let's talk voting rights. One of my favorite bills this session is Senator Daley's bill about fake electors. This will be the absolute last time that the state of Nevada is going to put up a fake slate and make national news in that way for all of the wrong reasons. Senator Hansen today also introduced a bill on qualified immunity, but not like you think, right? Not the way I might bring it. He's actually trying to add qualified immunity to our statutes in response to a recent court case. Oh, look, Senator Dundera-Loop, hey. Chair of Finance, dropping in. I have another bill in the criminal justice arena. One is to prevent officers who've been decertified in another state from coming to Nevada and seeking certification. The other bill I'm bringing in the criminal justice arena is I'm trying to look at a bunch of offenses that are not safety related, and I'm going to make them secondary. Okay, so no longer will officers be able to pull you over just because you got the stuff dangling from your rear view mirror. You won't be able to get pulled over anymore because you have just one brake light out, right? You won't be able to get pulled over anymore if you're going 0 to 5 over, right? And some of those other offenses we know that tend to be pretext to stop people and snoop around. We're going to put an end to that. Senator Scheibel has a great bill that would allow people who are in jail to have access to voting. Guess what? They still have that right. We should be making it as easy as possible for every person to vote. So that's just a small snippet, but really lots of good things coming and lots of good things we're going to stop as well. Lots of bad things we're going to stop.
Senator Donna West asked, do you know the number of Hansen's bill?
I do not, but it's got to be in the 220s.
We'll get it for you. We'll put it in the chat, Donna, because I know my team's looking it up right now too. So I just didn't know if you knew off the top of your head. All right. Last thing I'm going to ask you about before we get to some of the audience questions, because we have quite a few audience questions coming in for you about the legislature. You know, there was a story that came out this week about all of the wonderful advancements in Nevada for our LGBTQ plus community. And you and I and so many on this call have been, very involved with making those things happen. We have some amazing transgender rights bills coming up. I believe Nevada should be proud of where we are with our LGBTQ partners. So for me, I saw a story also this week that Power to Parent, who in my humble opinion is a hate group, sent you, they had a meeting up here with some young folks, a lobby day, and some of the young folks delivered a Valentine with some hate speech on it against LGBTQ plus people. And they deliver it specifically to your office. Talk to us about what that is about and how harmful that is, to have young people talking about those things in that way, but also how hurtful it was for you to be a part of that community and have that happen to you.
So I'll first say I don't know how much Power to Parent was involved. This was a school choice lobby day. And so the children were here from multiple schools advocating largely for support for the governor's idea of giving, I think it's $10 million for opportunity scholarships. And, in all fairness, they had hundreds of these hearts, and they chose to kind of give me, it was on a string of 3, right? And I don't think they read these. I consider this a bit of bad lobbying, right? I mean, check your materials before you come into a senator's office. But Annette, you hit on a really important point, and that is some adult is teaching these children these types of things, right? And the heart said, no LGBTQ plus, no CRT. That is telling me that sometimes some of these folks are doing what they accuse us of. That is, in fact, indoctrination, right? All of us know that children are born without hate for other people, right? That has to be taught. And it's very clear that there are children who are going to some of these private schools who are being taught that they are less than, that they're not worthy. And I'm very lucky. I'm 37 years old. I came out when I was 14, so 23 years ago, and I've been Black my whole life, right? I'm fairly comfortable in my own skin and who I am. But I worry about these children who are receiving this message and are probably less comfortable in who they are. They don't have someone to talk to. And that's just not right. And what's definitely not right is us supporting these schools with public dollars. If they want public dollars, they can be public schools, right? Sometimes parents send their children to private schools because they want them to receive a particular message. They want them to receive an education that is aligned with their religious values. Fine. Just don't ask us to support it, right? Because public schools will be a space where all children can feel accepted, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of their skin color. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that that continues to happen.
Senator, one of the other elements of this that particularly pissed me off, other than the fact that they came from my senator, is that, when Marie and I have done research over the years on these private schools, these charter schools who want these public dollars, a lot of their charters or a lot of their governing documents actually state on the record, if you do a quick Google search, that they're able to discriminate against young people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, may have disabilities, who may be, part of various communities if they don't speak English, right? Talk to us about that piece of it too, because I often think that part is lost in all of this, that these schools can actually discriminate against young people simply for being who they are. And our public dollars should not be going to those institutions when our public schools don't do that.
Yeah. If you see a charter school that has this in their documents, you send that to me. I will call that school. I will call the State Public Charter School Authority myself. It's my understanding charter schools especially should not be discriminating against any students, right? And so if that's an issue, we need to make sure that we are addressing that, because charter schools are funded as public schools. Almost 100%, right? Aside from transportation and building construction, they get all of the dollars that follow around children like other public schools do. So we need to make sure that is absolutely not happening. Private schools are a whole nother beast, right? And a long time ago, well before I was born, we kind of decided that private schools can exist. They have way more freedom than public schools do. And I'm not going to mess with that system. But if you want your children to receive that message, you are going to have to pay for it. And we're going to make sure that that continues to be the case here in Nevada. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with any private school that wants public dollars about reforming some of their curriculum so that it's in line with our values. I'm so glad that we are not Florida. In Florida, there would have been 100 of those hearts. We found one. And Nevada's always been a super progressive state for these types of things. We're going to keep it that way.
Yeah, Donna in the chat just said that those are some of the schools who won't accept her oldest grandson who is on the spectrum. And so I know we've seen this 100 times with these schools. Okay, let's get to some of the questions for you, and then we'll go to our panel. So we'll ask, how common are hate crimes in Nevada, and how often do they involve firearms? Oh, Senator, that one's for you.
So I don't have hate crime statistics in front of me. I do know that in the very recent past, with our previous president, who I will not name, we saw a statistically significant increase in the commission of hate crimes, right? That's why last session I brought a bill that will ensure that the state of Nevada is participating in the federal hate crime reporting database. How often are these done with guns? That's another great question. And I don't have those numbers right in front of me either, but I can tell you that we do see a correlation for gun violence and hate crimes in a similar way that we see correlation with people who commit domestic violence and the use of guns to then perpetuate those crimes. And so this is a very real thing that we need to address. And I'm hoping we can bring some of those numbers down, but I will be more than happy to get y'all some more specifics.
We'll have it for the bill hearing. Don't you worry. Thank you for that. Also, we did get the bill number. We put it in the chat for Senator Hansen's bill. So Donna, thanks for asking that question. Amber asks, what keeps you going when the session gets so hectic? This is tough work, and we appreciate you so much.
Oh, I appreciate you all. The work I do is really on the back end, right? A lot of on the ground activists, right, do a lot of this work. And then it comes to me and I sign my name on a bill and say, look at all the great things we've done, right? But it doesn't get to me unless all of you are out there doing the legwork. So I wonder how you all keep going. And I'll be honest, it gets rough. And it's about self-care. It's about having mentors and people who you can complain to, not in public, right, but in private, so that you can release some of those tensions. I'll be honest, guys, my blood pressure is pretty high, though.
Yeah, I just went to the doctor too, Senator, and they were like, so let's talk about the red meat you're eating and maybe up your meds. Thanks. Okay, next one's from Matilda. She asked, Senator, can you talk to us more about your bill, SB 142?
I would love to. SB 142 is the Homeless Person's Bill of Rights. And it simply states that every person, housed or unhoused, has the same rights in the state of Nevada. You have the right to use public spaces in the same manner as everyone else. You have the right to not be discriminated by the state. You have the right to not be discriminated by an employer. You have the right to not have your information shared outside of state and federal law. And you have the right to emergency services and all remedies under state law if any of those rights are violated. It's a bill that I wish I didn't have to bring. Everybody keeps asking me, well, don't these people already have these rights? If you ask them, the answer would probably be no, right? And there are some folks out there who are a little nervous about this bill because they think it's going to have to change their behavior. But that to me raises questions about their behavior and not the bill itself. We're going to make it clear that if you are a resident of this state, you are a resident of this state, and we will treat you with the same respect and dignity as anyone else. Homeless people, people who are unhoused, they aren't synonymous with being drug addicts. It's not synonymous with being a criminal. There's plenty of criminals and drug addicts who have homes, right? We've got laws to address those types of issues. This is about ensuring that some of the least of us have a voice in this building. I often say that businesses have lobbyists, right? Homeowners have lobbyists. Homeless people don't. And we have to make sure that somebody is thinking about them too. This is my best effort as one of 63 to make sure that we restore some dignity and kindness and compassion to how we approach the issue of the unhoused.
Senator, I have another really good question from Ignacio. He asked, Senator Harris, I was so proud of you today. Can you please explain to the audience why SB 172 is so important, and especially at a time like this when we see reproductive health care under attack and we see people going backwards? Why is this so important for Nevada to keep going forward?
Well, I'll start with the fact that Nevada is at the top of all the wrong lists when it comes to unplanned teen pregnancy, STD rates. I mean, guys, we should all be ashamed of ourselves. We have to address what is essentially a public health crisis in our state. And it made no sense to me that we allow minors to consent to the examination and treatment for an STI, but we don't allow them to consent to the preventative services in the first place, right? I'm sure everyone's heard the phrase, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's just good public policy. We all know we were all teenagers. We all know they're doing the do. We need to make it as easy as possible for them to do it safely. And if a teenager comes into a doctor's office because they want to practice safe sex, we should be making sure that they're able to do that. That's what this bill is about. This bill is about making sure all of our children have access to the things they need to engage in the behaviors that make all parents a little bit uncomfortable, but to do so safely so that we don't have to treat them on the back end.
Imagine that. Like, we also don't have comprehensive sex ed in the state. It's so weird. It's like it goes hand in hand. Okay, Senator, thank you for your time. Thanks for all you're doing. How do people get in touch with you if they have an issue or if they just want to work on one of your awesome bills that you're moving through this session?
Okay, rapid fire. Email dallas.harris@sen.state.nv.us. Twitter @DallasHarrisNV. Cell phone 702-748-8458. I consider myself as the legislator that has the most open door in this building. I'll talk to just about anybody about just about anything. You want to reach out? You may have to bug me 7 times, but I'll get back to you. Happy to hear from any of you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Senator, and looking forward to the hearing on your gun bill. We're excited for it, and we'll make sure that all the viewers who are watching know when it's happening. Thanks for joining us. All right, Lily, I want to bring you in. Lily is with the ACLU of Nevada, one of the friends I have who is still in the building, of course, because we are doing the work. Lily, introduce yourself. Tell the folks what you do at the ACLU and all the good work that you're working on this session.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. I'm the policy manager for the ACLU of Nevada, and I would say that I'm a lobbyist for the unhoused population, and for definitely, folks that may or may not be able to come to the legislature and advocate for themselves. So we're looking at people that have attacks on their civil liberties and overall atrocities that might deal with the folks that are in more marginalized communities.
All right. So Lily, you have a lot of bills that you're working on. You're a lot like us. You track a little bit of everything. So talk to us about some of the bills that you've been working on recently. There's one in particular that I think is my favorite so far, but you do a lot of good work. So talk to us about some of the bills that you've testified on and worked on recently.
Yeah, so I think I know the one you're talking about. It's AB 161, and that is Assemblyman Cameron Miller's bill. And we really had a great experience working on this one. And what this would do is it would address communication impairment with drivers, because people who are driving, who are, anywhere from deaf to on the autism spectrum, have a much higher chance of getting into a use of force incident when they are pulled over by a police officer, just because their communication style or ability is a little bit different. So this would allow the officer to know beforehand that this person might communicate differently, and it could quite literally save lives. 30 to 50% of use of force incidents happen with someone who has a disability. So this is common sense legislation. We had support across the board. We like to say that, when the police unions and the sheriffs and chiefs and folks are on the same side of the ACLU, that it should be an automatic pass, because I think it's only happened twice. But it just makes sense. And we had some really moving testimony, from you and from other parents. And I can see how this would help my own son, who's not yet a driver, but will be really soon. And also, Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod also kind of wrote this at the same time, and then we decided to merge them because she does suffer from hearing loss. So what she, her example was so great, like her hearing loss is on the ear that you would be pulled over with. So she has to go like this to hear you sometimes. So you can imagine what that would look like in a pullover situation, right? Or in a traffic stop. And then you say, oh yeah, I can't, that's not what you want to be doing in a traffic stop. So that one I'm really excited about. Coming up here pretty soon we are going to have SB 155, which is carried by Senator Orangehall. And that's to address excessive fines and fees that have to do with ordinances enacted by cities and counties around like people engaging in life-sustaining activities, so people who are unsheltered. So there are some common misdemeanors and common violations that occur when people are living outside or they're unsheltered or homeless. And we would like to make sure that when we are asking these people or giving them a citation, that we're giving them a citation to receive a service, not to pay a fine. You cannot squeeze blood from a stone, giving people, sometimes up to a $500 fine or jail time when they're already suffering and, have little to no resources at all. Just doesn't make any sense. So we would like to, if somebody is ticketed or cited for something, to bring them to a community court, a diversion court, and drug treatment court, which are some of the best methods to deal with folks that are suffering outside. And we have the cooperation of some of the diversion courts. Also, they'll be doing part of the presentation with us as well. But yeah, things like drug courts really help reduce recidivism. The graduation rate, for instance, from a drug court is 60%. And then, and that's helps them gain employment. And here we have a caveat where if you do assisted outpatient treatment, you do get housing. So that is, really helpful. So we're really trying to just look at legislation that makes sense, that can get something done this session, no matter what. Is it as broad as I wanted to go? No. You can see the original draft of the bill, but it's going to go somewhere. And I think it's really important that we, as Senator Harris said, start speaking up for these folks because, interfacing with them all the time, people feel invisible, and that's not okay. One other one that's been fun is baby bonds. And that's carried by the treasurer's office, and we're happy to work with them on that. And what that's going to do is close the wealth gap. Basically, people that are born on Medicaid are going to receive an investment in their future. When they're 18, they can use that investment on college, trade school, owning a business, buying a house. And that's another really great piece of legislation that will set us up for a better future.
Yeah, we love all of those bills. Lily, will you repeat the bill numbers for each of those awesome 3 bills? I know people are asking in the chat because they want to follow them.
Yes, absolutely. So the communication impairment bill is AB 161. And then the ability to pay assessment, which is the one having to do with unsheltered folks, is SB 155. And then baby bonds, I forgot because it was 2 weeks ago.
I know Maria knows. She'll put it in the chat.
Right.
We'll tell you, but we testified on baby bonds too. Yeah, it's like once we testify on these things,
then they go.
They just kind of go out of our brains. AB 28. There we go.
AB
it's the treasurer's bill. So yeah, AB 28. So if you want to follow along, it's a fabulous bill. All right, Lily, we're going to come right back to you. I want to go to Ben to talk about some of the awesome housing bills. We just heard one of the big ones yesterday. So Ben, come in, tell us about the coalition that you run, that we are a proud member of, and talk to us about the good work that y'all are doing this session around housing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Annette. It's great to be here. Good to see you. Thank you for having me. For everyone I do not know watching, my name is Ben Innes, and I'm the coalition coordinator for the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance. For a little background and context, we are a coalition of grassroots organizers and community advocates across the state. And I think what sets us apart, or what I know sets us apart, is we work directly with Nevada tenants to develop solutions and advocate for these community investments so that we can solve the root causes of housing insecurity that is plaguing our state. Obviously, the country as well, but talking about Nevada, and this has been going on for years. Should go without saying, we believe that housing is a human right, and why we work with tenants is that those closest to the problem are the closest to the solutions, and that tenants, and again, talking about advocates for the unhoused as well, should be at the forefront of shaping housing policy. And why do I say that? Kind of a chip on my shoulder sometimes. There are a lot of housing coalitions and alliances in our state that don't work with tenants. They are led and driven by builders and developers, and I understand they are an important part of the process. But I don't think you should, present yourself in that light and have, stock photos on your website and et cetera, when those are made up folks. And we have a lot of exciting, priorities this session, for better, for worse. They're continued from last session. And I think that shows that we're committed to this work, to these issues, to bring these forward now. And those are, in short, to address rising costs in housing, in renting, to prevent housing discrimination, eviction reform, particularly talking about summary eviction and what that looks like and means in our state and how that impacts renters in Nevada and statewide, and local control over neighborhood stability, which is otherwise known as Dillon's rule, and that goes back to addressing those rising costs. And I'm happy to go in depth, or as in depth as I can, on some of those issues. And I appreciate you bringing up SB 78, which was heard yesterday, and I know we'll talk more about that. And we're organizing with tenants. We're building tenant power. Our upcoming advocacy day, and I'll plug that again later, is this month in March. That's Wednesday, March 22nd, and we're making tenants' voice heard.
And we are going to be at your lobby day supporting that. I have some of our team coming up for it. We're super excited for it. There's like 2 weeks of nothing but lobby days, and we're going to have everybody under the sun in this building, which is great. Talk to us about the bill that we heard yesterday, SB 78, and why it's so important, and also the good work y'all did to get some of the folks we don't typically work with on these bills into more of a neutral space. Because you all worked hard with culinary and others to get them there. And I think that's kind of monumental based on how we've seen housing move in this building historically.
Yeah, absolutely. So for more context, Senate Bill 78 is carried by Senator Doñate, and we applaud him and are grateful for him for pushing that forward. And that bill is entirely about tenant protections, and what specific tenant protections. It's about clarity. It's about application fees, cleaning deposits, and security deposits. And so often those fees stack up. I know there's staff directly that were part of Battleborn Progress that are impacted by this issue of being displaced with short notice and trying to secure new housing. And in that process, this very competitive and expensive process, shelling out $50, $75 more per application, and that adds up quickly. And so when rents are increasing, potentially, we'll say on average 20% in a year, folks can't, working folks cannot also muster the hundreds, maybe $1,000 just in the application process to secure housing. And then unfortunately, I know, for many of us, and I have experienced it as well, as a renter with security and cleaning deposits and how vague those are, say, to put up $1,600 rent, and you're excited, you're counting on that, getting that money back. You're a good tenant, and that's going to help you secure housing. And the next step, and that's if you don't get that back with no explanation why, no chance to maybe make amends or fix some of those issues if it's about cleaning and quality of things, and it's taken from you without explanation, without recourse, or maybe you were owed it, you were deserving it, and your landlord will not give it back to you. So this ensures clarity on all of those terms, limits those fees, defines those fees, and makes sure that tenants get those deposits back. And you spoke about really important, the amendment process and working, say across the aisle, and to really push these important issues forward. And so everyone involved in the coalition and in the policy space, working with realtors, and maybe, not really expecting to say that in the past. And we know that this kind of collaboration is essential to the process, and that also that collaboration doesn't mean that these this very important bill has to lose its urgency. It's not defanged in order to send it up towards the governor, who also recognizes housing as one of the, or if not the most important issue in our state, to sign these bills into law, and again to enshrine, put into paper, tenant protections as a crucial item. Did I miss anything?
Well, Ben, I was going to ask you, there's a lot of conversation around the state right now about rent control. And I think that's kind of the ultimate goal that we're trying to get to, in addition to more affordable housing, making sure that we have people building up and not necessarily out. All of the things that, kind of our long-term goals, I think, for what we want to do with this housing coalition. Talk to us about where we're at with some of that, because I know so many people ask us about that in our work, but I also know we're dealing with a governor who may not be necessarily in the right space on these types of issues. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've seen in the major push down south in Las Vegas, particularly North Las Vegas, led by Culinary Union, is that workers, tenants, community members statewide, they want, and they're fighting for neighborhood stability. And when we say neighborhood stability, this keeps people housed, keeps folks in their homes. This is a public health issue, this is an education issue, financial issue, mental health issue, and so on. And eviction should never be the solution. Exploiting renters through egregious, we talked about again, 20% increases in rent year after year, or $100 increases rent year after year that folks cannot maintain, cannot sustain. I mean, is your place getting $100 nicer? Is it getting invested in upkeep, or is it just these barriers and maybe this carrot on a stick that's higher and higher and higher that working folks cannot maintain and achieve? And there's a couple ways, like I said, that we can I think pursue this and achieve this as we push for this. It is for putting neighborhood stability directly as a bill, or as we talked about, giving local control over neighborhood stability. And so, I'm excited about this multi-pronged approach. And again, that or local control, we talk about Dillon's rule, because for years, as our communities have voiced this issue, the concern, the desperation and the urgency for some of these controls to keep people housed in an affordable and dignified manner, is that, between state, county, and city, each level pointing the finger at the other, saying, well, we can't do that. And maybe, over legal issues, they're a little intimidated or afraid, but we need action now. So determining at the state level, giving cities and counties that ability through law, that they have that power, then I think that'd be a great step. And then we can move that forward at those levels, those jurisdictions.
All right, we got an audience question for you, Ben, and then I'm going to move to Andrew. This comes from one of our members. It says, I always hear the solution to rent/housing costs is going to be more construction. But is that actually true? It seems like there's plenty of units always being built in Vegas and Reno as well, Northern Nevada. How do we actually maybe solve this crisis once and for all?
Yeah, and this, relates to Senator Harris and Lily's comments, about the unhoused. And there's so many myths about the unhoused community, or those, working class folks who are trying to stay housed, that, personal failures, not working hard enough, budgetary issues. But it's important to point out that homelessness, and I typically try not to use that word, is a housing issue. It has nothing to do with drugs, alcohol, substances, mental health. Yes, these are frequent, present in these conditions, but that is not what drives these issues. And supply is a big part of it. I don't even want to say supply, because then we get into kind of gross, abstracted economical terms that takes away the human element, that denies the fact that housing is a human right. And when we deny that, is because we prioritize it as a commodity, an investment, something that is lucrative, something to profit from. And I was going to save this for maybe another question, but the mom and pop landlord kind of narrative. And again, yeah, I'll try to save that. And so it is a matter of, we'll just say culture, I guess, ideology. And I'll touch on Lily is supporting me with a very helpful comment, is that when we don't view it as something that is essential and integral to just livelihood and thriving, that it is, there are barriers, and it's kept and taken away from folks. And what Lily kindly just pointed out is there are 120 empty homes per each unhoused individual in the U.S. And I think this is true across any industry when it comes about, are you reaching more folks, or are you making more money? And that in any industry, I think across the board in the world, what have you, is that it is more lucrative to make more money and not serve more folks. And so what Lily and I are saying, and what I'm saying is that we have the ability, we can house folks, we can keep people sheltered, we can protect them and support their quality of life, and we choose not to.
Lily, I know you personally, not just at the ACLU, do a tremendous amount of work with the unhoused population and just generally on housing. Anything you want to add to this? Because I know this is something that is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, the housing conversation is really interesting, especially when we hear the mom and pop landlord narrative, or when we see things like we're going to see, maybe we'll see something about lease assurance, asking renters who are already choosing between medicine or food or paying the rent to reach deeper into their empty pockets to better the, scenario for a landlord. We can afford to pay mortgages because we're already paying someone's mortgage. We're not only paying someone's mortgage, we're also paying probably for their kids' schooling, and we're paying for their extra vacation home and for their Lexus. Like, we absolutely do have the money to own homes. We are dealing with a crisis of greed where people have hoarded shelter and they are selling it to the highest bidder. And it's really important that we get real about what that is. Raising the rent. I mean, I've never received a security deposit back, nor have I ever damaged a home I've ever lived in. All I've done is just given someone an extra $2,000 or whatever it is. These security deposits, us paying rent, that does not go on our credit score. It does not go towards owning a home, and it's very much by design. So somebody is going to have to give up something for everyone else to be okay. And the thing is, the kind of society that we want to live in, I'm pretty sure for everyone, doesn't involve people who are suffering from increased mental illness. It doesn't involve children who go to bed hungry or live in their cars. It doesn't involve people who are unsheltered or freeze to death outside. I think that all of us would like to see a thriving world and an advanced society like they have been able to create in other places. And that starts with housing. It always starts with housing. You cannot treat somebody with a mental illness effectively if they are going back and sleeping outside. You cannot, help rescue someone from a sex trafficking situation if they don't have somewhere to live. You cannot, end youth attendance issues or education issues if those kids don't have lights on inside. Like, it all comes back to housing, and you're going to hear it over and over until we fix the problem. So, unfortunately, although we had so much great support this week for the first big housing bill, that bill was up last session too. And we knew that if we didn't pass that bill, that we would be seeing bills around homelessness. And that's what we're seeing now. If you don't pass the housing bills now, they will be the homelessness bills later. And that's where we're at.
Absolutely. All right, Andrew, I want to come to you because there were some other important bills that were up this week. We testified on many of those as well. It's been a busy week for us. Today, we had Assembly Bill 112, which was the wildlife crossings bill. This all started from work with Governor Sisolak, who did an executive order to designate wildlife corridors for animals and all of the different things that roam free across Nevada. But this one in particular is actually super important to not just the animals, it's important to humans too. So talk to us about the bill that was heard today and some of the other good stuff that the Nevada Conservation League is working on this session.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get started with our Assembly Bill 112, the Wildlife Crossings Bill, as it's called. To explain what a wildlife crossing is, because I'm not sure if everyone watching and tuning in knows what that might be. In layman's term, in the simplest terms possible, a wildlife crossing is a form of infrastructure, be it an underpass or an overpass, that provides our habitat, wildlife animals, connection to their natural migratory patterns. As a result of all the infrastructure we build out, whether it's highways or different forms of roads, we are cutting across different natural migratory patterns that have been there before we ever touch base on land. So as a result, it's leading to a high and alarming number of vehicle and wildlife collisions. It's reported that on a yearly basis, the Nevada Department of Transportation saw it cost the state roughly $20 million as a result of the different wildlife and vehicle collisions that take place. It's resulting in 250 accidents and roughly 5,000 wildlife animals that are killed on a yearly basis as a result. And that's just in the state of Nevada. Across the country, this is costing taxpayers and states roughly $8 billion a year. So not only is it a common sense solution, but it's also a bipartisan solution. This isn't anything new or revolutionary. There's actually wildlife crossings, especially near Boulder City, that help, and up north as well, that help connect our bighorn sheep, as well as many other different forms of wildlife, again, to avoid wildlife vehicle collisions. Annette, you spoke about this earlier, about how it got hit by a deer, or a deer hit your car, better yet. And really, it's the purpose of wildlife crossing is to avoid accidents like this that take place on a yearly basis. And again, this is taking place all over the country in parts like Florida, the Western United States, Utah, Montana, you name it, it's probably on there. But I also want to add on to the fact that there's federal funding opportunities to be able to create this infrastructure. So not only is it a common sense solution to be able to put it forward, it's also going to open up the state to a lot more federal funding that we could leverage to then create much more forms of infrastructure that go to creating good paying jobs, as well as tackling a really critical issue that's taking place across the state. But in terms of some other bills and priorities that we've seen, there are two that I really want to speak to. The first one, and you've worked on this, and I can't remember if we heard it this week or so last week. There's a lot of bills being introduced, but it was Assembly Bill 128 that's being sponsored by Assemblywoman Sandra Howdy. This bill would essentially put funding towards the Outdoor Recreation Education Grant under the Division of Outdoor Recreation. The grant, as well as the Division of Outdoor Recreation, was established in 2019 thanks to the efforts of many advocates, especially those at BBP and NCL and many others. The unfortunate truth is the fact that the Outdoor Education and Recreation Grant was never funded. The purpose of this grant was specifically to help schools, nonprofits that do work within low-income and underinvested communities, in hopes that they could tap into these resources to be able to take our students, more than anything, out and about within our public lands to develop a greater appreciation and love for our outdoor spaces. Unfortunately, as a result of the fact that some of our communities have been underinvested in, not everyone has equal access to the outdoors. So that bill would hopefully be able to remedy that, and not only, again, would be able to help our students develop a greater love and appreciation for the outdoors. There's also Assembly Bill 184, which was introduced just yesterday. That I remember since I was at the hearing, but Assembly Bill 184 is being sponsored and spearheaded by Assemblyman Howard Watts. Essentially, it's our Clean Trucks Incentives Program. So medium and heavy duty vehicles like trucks, as well as school buses, make up 5% of the vehicles in the transportation sector and on the road, but they contribute roughly 30% of greenhouse gas emissions within the transportation sector as a whole. So this Clean Trucks Incentives Program would do just that, provide incentives for businesses, for schools to be able to tap into these resources in hopes of making that switch over to vehicles that are powered by clean energy power. Not only would it reduce greenhouse gas emissions and put the state back on track to meet the greenhouse gas reduction goals, but also result in healthier air, especially for some of our hardest hit communities that are bearing the brunt of the climate crisis. So those two bills in particular are some of the top priorities for NCL, as well as the Wildlife Crossings bill. But I do want to give a quick highlight and shout out to Assembly Bill 131, which is being sponsored by Assemblywoman Leslie Cohen, the Urban Forestings Program. Such a fantastic and amazing program. That's the brainchild of Lisa Ortega, who's a phenomenal environmental champion here in the state. The Urban Forestry Program, AB 131, would create the Urban Forestry Program in hopes of doing just that, supporting ongoing initiatives, ongoing programs across the state that deal with urban forestry, that plant water or climate resistant and less water intensive trees across specifically underinvested communities like those found in North Las Vegas, the East Side, the West Side, and many others that are suffering as a result of the urban island heat effect, and just much more. So not only would it provide shading as well as mitigating the urban island heat effect, but it would also beautify our neighborhoods and provide them some equal footing to be able to tackle the climate crisis. I know I don't have much time, but there are a few other bills I do want to highlight, especially for our audience just to be aware of. Assembly Bill 84, which was, I think, heard this week. This would allow tribe members to have free entry into state parks. Why it hasn't been done before, I don't know. But it is something that's already being done in federal parks, but we just hope to make sure it's done within state parks. This isn't one of the bills that we're sponsoring, spearheading, so I don't want to take credit for that, but it is a really great bill. The same goes for Assembly Bill 144, which would phase out the sale of fluorescent lamps to switch over to LEDs and make that emphasis. Especially because, for those who don't know, fluorescent lamps, when not handled properly or disposed of properly, lead to water contamination. And this is being spearheaded by Assemblywoman Selena LaRue Hatch, who's doing a phenomenal job within the Assembly on a whole range of other bills that I could talk about. But I'll keep it there for now.
Listen, those are like the other favorite bills I got to testify on this week. We've been busy. I got to do all those too. One other one that I wanted to highlight, Andrew, was AB 164 that was also heard this week, because there was a ton that were heard this week. And it's kind of the companion bill that Speaker Yeager's working on to create an outdoor educational advisory board, essentially, so we could eventually get like a curriculum to take our young people outside. And it goes hand in hand with the outdoor equity grant that I know he and Assemblywoman Howdigi are working on to make sure that our young people, especially our young people of color, can get outside and experience our outdoors. So that was another one that we got to work on this week together. So been spending a lot of time with Christy in the building this week. So it's been awesome. Andrew, I want to come back to you because I did get hit by a deer over the summer. I was in New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia. And by the way, you don't want to be stranded on the side of the road in West Virginia for 8 hours. It's not a good look. And one of the things that was so kind of scary about that was we didn't have cell reception. Luckily, eventually the highway kind of, not a patrol, but the safety people finally showed up and found us. But, how often are these things happening out in our rural communities, especially? I know they have some of these up in Elko, and I know they've been super successful as well. But, why is this going to be so important for us to get done? And by the way, the hearing today, most of the people were in support of it, even the Republicans. So this is a nonpartisan issue because we know tons of people who've had this happen to them.
No, absolutely. To kind of touch more specifically on the support of the bill, and as you mentioned, there were a handful of not just Democratic legislators speaking in support of this, but also Republican legislators. I think one thing that was really frightening, especially a comment that came from a Republican legislator, was the fact that before there were wildlife crossings, especially out within our northern Nevada and our rules, when they would walk out to the main highway or the roads out there, in word per word, they said it looked like a slaughterhouse, just because of how much wildlife was being killed in the process. That in of itself is just a frightening picture to really think about and really try and comprehend. But to talk more about the importance of it, and you mentioned this, and I mentioned 250 reported accidents. That was a miscount. It's actually 500 yearly reported accidents. And there is no doubt about it that, especially in our rural areas, though the number of accidents that are reported might be underrepresented. Because I'm sure there might be accidents in which people just want to walk away from it. There's shock, there's trauma that's involved as a result of having hit not just a wildlife, but depending on how nasty the impact was, it just builds on top of that. And again, it's costing the state roughly $20 million. And this isn't just the state. This is also taxpayers, insurance companies that get involved, the maintenance costs that have to go behind this. It's just a no-brain solution that we just have to continue working on. Not to mention, we know especially the Nevada Department of Transportation has a really good idea as to where these wildlife crossings should go. There have been studies done on migratory patterns, especially within the state of Nevada, with the amount of wildlife that we have, to identify where these are commonly taking place in hopes of being able to put this infrastructure to avoid wildlife vehicle collisions.
Absolutely. Okay. I know you have a lobby day coming up. I think everybody does. So I can't wait to have everyone under the sun up here with me, because it gets a little lonely in this building, as Lily can attest. So Andrew, when are you bringing folks up, and how do folks get involved if they want to come to Carson City and lobby for Conservation Lobby Day? And we'll put a link in the chat for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you. For Conservation Lobby Day, fun fact, this year, similar to last year, we're including a virtual component to it as well. And we're expanding it calling it Conservation Lobby Week. So Conservation Lobby Day on March 27th will kick off Conservation Lobby Week. But really, Conservation Lobby Day is going to be a day for environmental partners as well as environmental advocates, grassroots advocates, to come to the legislature with us to advocate on behalf of pro-environmental legislation, a lot of which I just mentioned, and some other fun stuff. But there will be a link that's dropped in the chat. Please feel free to sign up. We're happy to bus folks up in 8 hours at a bus trip to Carson City. But please feel free to join us. We're providing food, transportation, and again, this is a free event. And if you're not able to join us on Conservation Lobby Day on Monday, March 27th, you can tune into our virtual nightly town halls on March 28th and March 29th. March 28th will be focused on climate equity, and March 29th will be focused on conservation and public lands. We plan to have legislators tune in as well as for Conservation Lobby Day. So it's going to be a fun, very informative 3 days, and we hope you can really join us during those days.
Well, I'll be there. I can't wait, Andrew. Thank you. Ben, you all have a lobby day coming up as well. Talk to us about the lobby day and how folks can attend and get involved if they're in Las Vegas or if they're in Northern Nevada.
Absolutely. Thank you, Annette. As I said earlier, it is Wednesday, March 22nd, and I've shared, I think, hopefully all the appropriate links and handles for Brian to share out with folks, as well as the RSVP link that can be found on Mobilize. And because it's on Wednesday, just much like Andrew said, that means folks in Southern Nevada and Las Vegas will be departing Tuesday, March 21st. And Northern Nevada folks in Reno or nearby can join us that Wednesday morning of. And similarly, food, travel, lodging will be provided and supported from the coalition. And I really quickly just want to touch on something today. Coordinating, reaching out to venues in the area in Carson, talking to Black Bear Diner. She goes, wow, like that sounds like you do really important work. That means a lot to me, because we have seniors who come in here to eat who are being evicted because their homes have been bought now under new ownership. They're facing eviction. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. This is exactly why we are here, in this fight, pushing our movement forward. So please join us. Let's show up. Let's show out. Let's make noise. Show our legislators why this issue is so important, and that, lobbyists with so much money to burn can't silence us. Yeah. Let me know if I missed anything.
No, I'm excited to have you all as well. And then Lily, talk to us about the good work. You talked to us about the good work that y'all are doing, but how do folks get involved with the ACLU, follow along with your legislative issues, and help testify and make their voices heard on your issues?
Yeah, so we're really lucky to be a part of a lot of different coalitions. So definitely, you all, Battleborn, highlight some of the stuff we do, Nevada Housing Justice Alliance, as well as Plan. But you can follow us on socials on Twitter, ACLUNV. Same thing on Instagram. And then, you can always reach out to any of us at ACLU. We love to hear from you anytime. And I'm in the building nearly every day, unless it is a whiteout blizzard, which has happened quite a bit so far.
Or a torrential downpour that's happening right now.
Which I hope isn't too bad, but we'll see.
It was wild when I looked out there earlier, but I haven't seen it in a bit.
We're having a sleepover in it.
Listen, you got spare room. Don't you worry. I'm housing all of our progressive lobbyists if they get stuck in Carson City. We're like the communal, rooms at this point. One of the other things that I wanted to talk a little bit about is we have reproductive health lobby days coming up with our friends over at NARAL and Planned Parenthood. So make sure you sign up for that. We can put a link in the chat as well. We also have Equalities Days coming up with our fabulous partners over at Silver State Equality and many of our LGBTQ plus groups that we'll be supporting. And then my very, very, very favorite event of the year, sorry, y'all, is Grassroots Lobby Days. And that's because I love the Nevada Women's Lobby. I've worked with them for a long time. Maria Teresa on our staff is on their board. And so they're also having their annual lobby day, and it comes with a training on Sunday and a trip up here on Monday. And for that one, and for Equality Days, we will be flying volunteers up. So we have about 10 spots for volunteers. We're also bringing our entire staff up here, which I'm super stoked about. So if you'd like to come to Grassroots Lobby Days and be one of our folks, Mary, don't worry, you're on my list. You were the first one, and Donna and Matt. So don't worry, y'all are on the list. But if there are other people who want to come for Grassroots Lobby Days, same thing. We will pay for your flights, we will pay for your meals, and we will pay for your lodging. So don't let cost be an issue. All of us have lobby days. We want you to get involved. All of these lobby days are fantastic. We'll be supporting each one of them in different ways. So we'll put the links in the chat, but get in touch with us specifically if you want to come up for Grassroots Lobby Days, because we will be flying people up here for that. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We had such a fabulous panel. I'm so excited to have all of my friends. It's nice to have them, and Senator Harris, who is my senator. Big thank you to y'all for tuning in every week. Next week, we're going to have a really great special. We're going to have Mark Woloshyn with the Nevada Secretary of State's office. I'm super excited about that, to talk about all the voting rights bills with our new Secretary of State. But we're also going to have a few freshman legislators. We do this every session where we get to intro some of our new cool freshman legislators. So we want to introduce you to them and tell you about the good work they do. So love to have y'all. Thank y'all for joining us, Ben. We'll have you on soon again. Lily, same to you. I'm sure we'll be screaming out front soon. Andrew, you're always welcome on in Spanish. So English, whatever you want to do. So thank y'all for joining us, and we'll see you next week. We'll be live at 5, and I'll be here in the building again. Talk to y'all soon.